Blair Whitmore picked out her pale blue dress very carefully. It had been 2 years since the accident that left her unable to walk, and this was her first date. She had practiced smiling in the mirror and thought about what she would say. But when the man came to the cafe, his eyes looked down at her wheelchair. His face changed. "I don't help people I feel sorry for," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Then he left. The cafe became very quiet. Blair sat still, trying not to cry while holding her coffee cup. Then a small voice broke the silence. "Daddy, why is that lady sad?" Blair had been sitting in the cafe for 20 minutes before he was supposed to come. She had rolled herself to the corner table by the window, the one with enough room to move without hitting chairs. The cafe smelled like cinnamon and fresh coffee. Soft music played from speakers she couldn't see. She had picked this place because it felt warm and hopeful, like maybe good things could happen here. The pale blue dress had taken her an hour to pick out. Not too fancy, not too plain. She had curled her hair that morning and put on makeup with hands that shook a little. In the mirror, she had looked almost like the person she used to be. Almost. 2 years ago, she had been a gymnast, not good enough for the Olympics, but good enough to compete in her area, good enough to have dreams. The balance beam had been her best event. She had loved feeling in control, flying through the air with nothing but strength and skill. Then came the fall during practice, the wrong angle, the wrong landing. The doctor said she was lucky to be alive. Lucky? That word didn't mean anything anymore after what happened next. The hospital had taught her how to get around in a wheelchair, how to get from her bed to the chair, how to dress herself, how to live in a body that didn't work the way it used to. But they couldn't teach her how to feel complete again. They couldn't teach her how to look at herself without seeing everything she had lost. She had tried dating on the internet after her best friend said it was time. Her profile didn't say anything about the wheelchair. She told herself it wasn't lying, just being smart. She had planned to explain when they met in person, to let him see her as a person first, before he saw the chair. That had been the plan. Blair watched the door. Her phone buzzed. He was here. He walked in looking exactly like his photos. Tall, neat, wearing a gray sweater that probably cost more than she paid for physical therapy each month. His eyes looked around the cafe and found her by the window. She raised her hand in a small wave and tried to smile confidently. He started walking toward her table. Then his eyes looked down at the wheelchair, at the wheels, at the footrests where her legs rested without moving. His face changed. It wasn't disgust exactly, more like disappointment, like he had ordered something online and got the wrong thing. "You didn't mention this in your profile," he said when he got to the table. His voice was loud enough for people to hear across the quiet cafe. Blair felt her smile freeze. "I wanted to tell you when we met." "Right." He looked around, knowing that people were watching now. A couple at the next table had stopped talking. The person making coffee glanced over from behind the counter. "Look, I'm sure you're nice, but I don't help people I feel sorry for. This isn't what I expected." The words felt like someone had hit her. Blair's hands grabbed the armrests of her wheelchair. "I'm not asking you to feel sorry for me," she said quietly. "I'm just asking for coffee." He was already backing away. "I don't think this is going to work. Good luck with everything." He turned and walked out. The bell above the door rang as it closed behind him. The cafe was completely silent now. Blair could feel everyone looking at her. The couple at the next table looked away quickly. The person making coffee got busy wiping down the machine. Blair stared at the empty chair across from her. She had moved it aside earlier to make room for her wheelchair. Such a small, simple thing that now felt embarrassing. She had made space for him, and he had walked away. Her throat felt tight. She would not cry here. Not in front of all these people watching. She reached for her coffee cup, happy to have something to hold, something to do with her hands. The cup was warm in her hands. She should leave, roll herself out of here and pretend this never happened. Add it to the list of things she had learned to swallow and survive. "Daddy, why is that lady sad?" The voice was small and clear, a child's voice, honest the way only kids can be. Blair looked up. A little girl stood a few feet away, maybe 5 or 6 years old, with dark curly hair and huge brown eyes. She wore a yellow dress with daisies on it and held a stuffed bunny under one arm. Behind her stood a man in his mid-30s, dressed in a nice suit that somehow didn't look show-offy. His face showed surprise, then something like understanding. "Rosie," he said gently, "we shouldn't bother people." But the little girl was already moving closer to Blair's table. "Are you sad because that man left?" "I saw him leave. That wasn't very nice." Blair made herself smile weakly. "I'm okay, sweetie." "You don't look okay." Rosie tilted her head, looking at Blair the way children do, completely honest. "You look like you're going to cry, but you're trying not to." The man stepped forward, putting his hand lightly on his daughter's shoulder. "I'm sorry. She hasn't learned yet about giving people space." "It's fine," Blair said, though her voice sounded thin, even to her. Rosie looked up at her father. "Can we help her? You always say we should help people who are sad." The man looked at Blair. There was something in his eyes, not pity exactly, but understanding, like he knew something about how she was feeling. "Would you mind if we joined you?" he asked. "Only if you want company. We can definitely leave you alone if you'd rather." Blair should have said no. Should have politely said no thanks and rolled herself out of this cafe and this whole embarrassing situation. But something about the way he asked, like her answer really mattered, like she got to choose, made her nod. "Sure," she said. "Why not?" The man pulled out the chair across from her, the one she had moved aside for someone who never planned to stay. He helped Rosie into the seat beside him, and the little girl immediately put her stuffed bunny on the table, facing Blair, like the toy needed to be part of the conversation. "I'm Owen," he said. "This is Rosie." "Blair." Rosie leaned forward. "I like your dress. It's the color of the sky." Blair looked down at the pale blue fabric. "Thank you. I like your dress too. Mine has flowers, see?" Rosie pointed at the daisies. "Daddy says flowers make everything better, but I don't think that's always true. Like when I'm really sad, flowers don't help. Bunny helps." She held up the stuffed animal. "Do you have a bunny?" Owen smiled apologetically. "Rosie has strong opinions about things that help when you're sad." For the first time since her date had walked out, Blair felt something other than embarrassment. A small break in the wall of her sadness, just big enough to let in a breath of air. "I don't have a bunny," Blair said to Rosie, "but I think you might be right about flowers." Rosie nodded seriously, happy to have someone agree with her. Owen caught Blair's eye, and there was something in his face, warm and real, that made her think maybe this terrible day might not end in complete disaster after all. Owen ordered hot chocolate for Rosie and another coffee for Blair, telling her not to worry about paying. The person making coffee brought them over with a kind smile that made Blair's stomach feel tight. She didn't want people to feel sorry for her. She'd had enough of that to last forever. "So," Owen said after Rosie had taken her first sip and gotten whipped cream on her nose, "do you want to talk about what happened? Or would you rather we pretend we're just 3 people who decided to share a table for no reason?" Blair liked that he had asked. Most people either asked too many questions or acted like she might break into pieces at any moment. "The second one sounds good," she said. Rosie wiped her nose with her napkin. "Daddy works a lot. Like a lot, a lot. Sometimes I forget what he looks like." Owen laughed. That's not quite true. Is too. You work more than Tommy's dad, and he's a doctor who saves people's lives. What do you do that's more important than saving lives? Rosie looked really curious. I help businesses grow, Owen said to Blair, like he was sorry for his job. I give them money so they can get bigger, not exactly saving lives. Blair found herself relaxing a little. There was something nice about the way they talked to each other, the easy love between father and daughter. It reminded her of something she had lost, though she couldn't quite say what. What about you? Owen asked. What do you do? The question felt heavier than he probably meant it to. What did she do? She used to be a gymnast, used to teach kids gymnastics on weekends, used to have a life that made sense. Now she went to physical therapy 3 times a week and tried to figure out what came next. I'm between things right now, Blair said carefully. Figuring out the next chapter. Rosie got excited. Like a book? I love books. Daddy reads me stories every night. Well, almost every night. Sometimes he falls asleep first because he's old. I'm 37, Owen said flatly. That's not old. You have gray hair, Rosie pointed out. 2 gray hairs. You've counted them many times. Blair smiled despite herself. The way they acted was pulling her out of the dark mood she had been sinking into. She took a sip of her coffee and noticed the person making it had made it exactly the way she liked it, even though she hadn't said how. Sometimes, small kindnesses show up when you don't expect them. Owen's phone buzzed on the table. He looked at it and frowned a little. Work? Blair asked. Always. He turned it off without reading the whole message. One of the companies I help is opening a new building next month. There's apparently a problem with the ribbon-cutting ceremony. A ribbon emergency, Rosie said seriously. Very serious, Owen agreed. He looked at Blair. It's actually a place that helps people get better after injuries. We've been working on it for 2 years. Physical therapy, help learning to do daily things, all kinds of services. Something clicked in Blair's memory. In Portland? The new Cascade Center? Owen's eyebrows went up. You know it? I did my rehab at the old Cascade place downtown, near the water. Blair felt something shift inside her chest. They helped me a lot. I heard they were making it bigger, but I didn't know it was already happening. We start building in 3 weeks, Owen said. The goal is to make it easier to use, better equipment, more workers, and payment plans, based on what people can afford, so cost isn't a problem. Blair studied him. He didn't say it like he was bragging, just saying facts. But there was something in his voice when he talked about the center, a kind of belief that surprised her. Why help people with injuries? She asked. Owen was quiet for a moment. Rosie had started drawing on a napkin with crayons the person making coffee had given her, humming softly to herself. My wife, he said finally. Rosie's mother. She had MS, multiple sclerosis. The rehab center downtown was where she went for treatment, where she learned how to handle the symptoms as they got worse. The people there gave her respect when everything else was trying to take it away. He said had, not has. Blair didn't ask. She didn't need to. She died 2 years ago, Owen added quietly. Since then, I've been trying to figure out how to make something good come from something so hard. Making the center bigger felt like a way to do that. Rosie looked up from her drawing. Mommy would like the new building. It has big windows and a garden. She would love it, Owen agreed, his voice soft. Blair felt her walls coming down even though she didn't want them to. She had thought he was here because he felt sorry for her, that he had seen her embarrassment and decided to help like some kind of hero. But maybe it was more complicated than that. Maybe he understood something about loss and starting over that most people didn't. I'm sorry, Blair said. About your wife. Owen nodded his thanks. Then Rosie pushed her napkin across the table. "I drew you a picture," she announced to Blair. "It's you in your chair, but you have wings because chairs can fly if you want them to." Blair looked at the crayon drawing, a stick figure in a wheelchair with huge purple wings coming from its back. Something in her throat felt tight. "It's beautiful," she said, and she meant it. 3 weeks later, Blair found herself at the grand opening of the new Cascade Rehabilitation Center. She hadn't planned on going. The invitation had come to her email because she was on the mailing list from when she was a patient. She had almost deleted it. But then she remembered Owen talking about the ribbon-cutting ceremony and Rosie's drawing that now hung on her refrigerator, and she surprised herself by saying yes. She would come. The new building was impressive. All glass and light, with ramps that didn't feel like they were added later, and doorways wide enough to get through easily. The garden Rosie had mentioned went along the south side, raised flower beds at wheelchair height, pathways smooth and flat. Blair was looking at the gym equipment when she heard Rosie's voice. "Blair, you came!" The little girl ran over wearing a navy dress that was probably for fancy events. Owen followed more slowly, looking a little overwhelmed in a dark suit. "You made it," he said, and his smile was real. "I hoped you would, but I wasn't sure." "The place looks amazing," Blair said, and she meant it. "Nothing like the old building. Better equipment, better space," Owen said. "We tried to design it around what people actually need, not what looks good in pictures." A woman in a staff uniform came over, looking apologetic. "Mr. Hayes, we need you for photos in 5 minutes." Owen nodded, then looked at Blair. "Will you still be here after? I'd love to show you around properly and get your thoughts on what we've built." Blair hesitated. This was dangerous, getting pulled into someone's life, letting herself hope for connection. But she found herself nodding anyway. The ceremony was short and professional. Owen cut the ribbon with the center's director and several board members. Blair watched from the crowd, noticing how uncomfortable he looked with the attention, how quickly he gave credit to the staff and designers. Afterward, he found her in the room with kitchen equipment, where she had been looking at the adaptive cooking setup. "Sorry about that," he said. "I hate those photo things, but apparently they're necessary to raise money." "You did fine," Blair said. "Very official." "Rosie's with her grandmother for the rest of the afternoon," Owen said. "Which means I'm free from dad duties for a few hours. Can I buy you lunch as a thank you for coming?" Blair knew she should say no, should keep the distance that had kept her safe for 2 years. But she was tired of safe, tired of small. "Lunch sounds good," she said. They went to a restaurant downtown that Owen promised had the best pho in Portland. He was right. They talked about the city, about books, about everything except the obvious things. Blair found herself laughing at his stories about Rosie's creative excuses for staying up past bedtime. He asked good questions about her life before gymnastics, her childhood in Seattle, her favorite places she had traveled. It wasn't until the check came that he brought up the center again. "I have to tell you something," Owen said. "When I saw you at the café that day, I recognized you, not from before, but from the center. I had seen you there during your rehab. I was visiting a lot when my wife was being treated, and I remembered seeing you in the gym. You were working with the parallel bars. The look on your face, how hard you were trying, stayed with me." Blair felt something cold settle in her stomach. "So you knew? When you came over to my table, you knew?" "I knew you'd been through something difficult, yes," Owen said, "but that's not why I came over. Rosie decided we were going to help, and once she makes up her mind about something, there's no stopping her. I just followed my daughter's lead." "Right." Blair set down her napkin. "So this has been what? A project? Poor Blair, who you saw struggling in rehab. Now you get to watch her put her life back together." "That's not what this is." Owen's voice was firm. Blair, I'm not here because I feel sorry for you. I'm here because I like talking to you. Because Rosie hasn't stopped asking about you for 3 weeks. Because when I showed you around the center today, you noticed things no one else did. You saw what would actually matter to people who use the space. Blair wanted to believe him, but the familiar weight of doubt pressed down on her chest. I should go, she said, reaching for her bag. Blair, wait. Owen didn't move to stop her, but something in his voice made her look up. I know what it's like to be seen as a tragedy. After my wife died, people looked at me like I was this broken thing that needed fixing, like I was just the sad widower, not a whole person. I hated it. So I'm not doing that to you. I'm not here to fix anything. Blair sat back slightly. Then why are you here? Because you make me feel less alone, Owen said simply. And I hope maybe I do the same for you. Over the next 2 months, Blair and Owen fell into an easy pattern. Coffee twice a week, sometimes with Rosie, sometimes just the two of them. He showed her the books he was reading to his daughter. She told him about the drawings she had started making, little pictures of women in wheelchairs doing impossible things, like flying, dancing, and climbing mountains. Rosie said Blair was her best adult friend, which Owen explained was a very special category. Blair started keeping art supplies at Owen's house for the afternoons when Rosie wanted to draw together. She taught the little girl how to shade with colored pencils, how to make people in drawings look like they were moving. It felt easy, natural, like maybe she could have this kind of life after all. Then came the art gallery opening. Owen had invited her to a charity event with local artists. Blair had been nervous about going, about moving around a crowded gallery in her wheelchair. But Owen had promised the place was wheelchair accessible. He had checked himself. The gallery was beautiful. White walls, good lighting, art that ranged from abstract paintings to photographs to sculptures. Blair was looking at a series of portraits when she heard 2 women talking near the wine table. That's Owen Hayes, one said, the tech investor. I heard he's been dating someone, the other replied. Apparently she's disabled, in a wheelchair. Blair's hand tightened on her armrest. How nice of him, the first woman said, her voice sounding fake. I guess he's working through his sadness by saving someone else. It's very giving of him. Like his rehab center project, her friend agreed. Everything's a mission with him now. Blair felt the blood drain from her face. Around her, the gallery continued its pleasant buzz of conversation and clinking glasses. But all she could hear was those words. Saving someone else. A project. A mission. She found Owen by the sculptures, talking with the gallery owner. He saw her coming and smiled, then saw her face. What's wrong? He asked right away. I need to go, Blair said quietly. What happened? Nothing. I just need to go. She turned her wheelchair toward the exit, moving around groups of people with the skill of someone who had learned to move through spaces that weren't built for her. Owen caught up with her outside on the sidewalk. Blair, talk to me. What happened in there? Is that what I am to you? The words came out sharper than she meant. Your project to make yourself feel better? The woman in the wheelchair you get to save so you feel better about not being able to save your wife? Owen looked like she'd hit him. What are you talking about? I heard people talking about how nice you are for dating someone disabled, about how this is all part of your mission to rescue broken people. Blair's voice cracked. I thought you understood. I thought you saw me as more than this chair. But maybe I'm just another center to build, another charity case to fix. That's not true. Owen's voice was raw. Blair, you're not a project. You're not charity. You're someone who makes me laugh. Someone who calls me out when I'm being ridiculous. Someone who taught my daughter that strength comes in different forms. But that's just it, Blair said, tears coming now. You see strength in my wheelchair. Everyone does now. I'm inspirational, Blair. Brave, Blair. Look how well she's handling it. But I don't want to be your inspiration. I don't want to be the symbol of your healing. I just want to be a person someone chooses because they actually want me, not because I make them feel good about themselves. I do want you, Owen said desperately, not because you're in a wheelchair, not even though you're in one, because you're you. But Blair was already moving down the sidewalk, putting space between them. She could hear Owen calling her name, but she didn't stop. She couldn't, because if she stopped, she might start believing him, and that was scarier than being alone. Blair spent the next week not answering Owen's calls and texts. She threw herself into her drawings, making pictures of women with wheels instead of legs, women who weren't apologizing for the space they took up. Her best friend came over and didn't say much, just sat with her while she worked. "You know you're running away," her friend said finally. "I'm protecting myself," Blair corrected. "From what? Someone who cares about you?" "From being someone's good deed," her friend sighed. "Blair, I love you, but you're being silly. That man looks at you like you're amazing. His kid draws you pictures. You're not his charity project. You're just scared." Blair didn't respond because her friend was right, and that made it worse. The package arrived on a Tuesday morning, a wooden box carefully packed with her name carved into the lid. Inside were 3 children's books, professionally printed and bound. The pictures were hers. The drawings she had been working on, the ones she had left at Owen's house and forgotten about. He had gotten them scanned, turned into stories, and printed into actual books. The first was about a girl in a wheelchair who discovered she could fly when she stopped trying to be like everyone else. The second was about a woman who climbed mountains on wheels because height didn't care how you got there. The third was about finding strength in surprising places. At the bottom of the box was a letter in Owen's handwriting. "Blair, you once told Rosie that flowers don't fix everything. You were right. These books won't fix anything either, but I wanted you to see what I see when I look at your art. You didn't just inspire me, you created a world I didn't know I needed. A world where my daughter can see herself in stories, where strength looks different than what we're told to expect. You gave that to us, not because you're in a wheelchair, because you're brave enough to imagine something better. I'm not asking you to come back. I'm just asking you to know that you were never a project. You were always just Blair. And that was always more than enough." Owen Blair sat on her apartment floor with the books spread around her and cried. Not sad tears exactly, but something closer to relief. The kind of tears that came when you'd been holding something tight for too long and finally let it go. She picked up her phone and typed a message. "You didn't fix me. You made me feel whole." The response came within seconds. "Coffee tomorrow? Just us. No gallery, no audience. Just 2 people who see each other." Blair smiled through her tears. "Just 2 people? Huh, I'd like that." They met at the same cafe where everything had started. Blair arrived first this time, choosing a different table, one in the middle of the room instead of tucked in the corner. She wasn't hiding anymore. Owen walked in exactly on time, carrying 2 cups from the coffee shop next door. "I know you like the coffee here better," he said as he sat down, sliding 1 cup toward her. "But I also know you secretly love their vanilla lattes, so I got both." Blair took the cup, touched that he had remembered such a small detail. They had only talked about it once, weeks ago. "Thank you," she said, "for the coffee and for the books." "Rosie's been sleeping with hers under her pillow," Owen said. "She makes me read the flying one every night, sometimes twice." "She's the reason you made them, isn't she?" Owen nodded. "She asked me why your drawings were just on paper when they should be in real books. I didn't have a good answer, so I found someone who could make it happen." Blair wrapped her hands around the warm cup. "I'm sorry for what I said at the gallery, about you trying to save me. You weren't completely wrong, Owen said quietly. After my wife died, I did throw myself into projects, the rehab center, work, anything that felt like moving forward. But Blair, you were never one of those projects. You were something else completely. What was I then? Owen took a breath. You were the first person in 2 years who made me feel like maybe I could be more than just a father and a businessman going through the motions. You saw me as a whole person, not the sad widower, not the generous helper. Just Owen, the guy who drinks too much coffee and falls asleep during bedtime stories. Blair felt something in her chest crack open. I've spent 2 years waiting for people to see past the wheelchair, to see Blair instead of the disabled woman. And then when you did that, when you actually saw me, I panicked. Because if you really saw me and still chose me, then I couldn't blame the wheelchair anymore. I'd have to actually be open and honest. Being open is terrifying, Owen agreed. So is this, Blair said, gesturing between them. Whatever this is becoming. What do you want it to become? The question hung in the air between them. The cafe hummed with quiet conversation around them, but Blair felt like they existed in their own, small bubble. I want it to be real, she said finally. Not you rescuing me, not me being your inspiration. Just 2 people who choose each other. Owen reached across the table, his hand palm up. An invitation, not a demand. Blair placed her hand in his. Just 2 people, he said. I can do that. The weeks that followed weren't perfect. Blair had moments when the old fears came back, when she wondered if she was too much work, too complicated. Owen had days when grief for his wife hit him suddenly, and he pulled away. They learned to handle these moments together, to give each other space while still staying connected. Rosie stayed the unlikely builder of their relationship, insisting that Blair come to her 6th birthday party and saying that no celebration was complete without all her favorite people there. Blair helped decorate, hanging streamers from her wheelchair while Rosie supervised with the serious look of someone managing a big event. Higher on the left, Rosie instructed. It has to be perfect. You're a tough boss, Blair said, adjusting the streamer. Daddy says I get it from Mommy. Rosie climbed down from her chair. He says Mommy always knew exactly how things should be. Blair had learned bits and pieces about Owen's wife over the months. Her name had been Caroline. She had been a teacher, amazing with children, patient in ways Owen admitted he wasn't. She had fought her illness with grace but also with anger, refusing to let it define her until the very end. I think your mommy would be proud of you, Blair said. Rosie thought about this seriously. Daddy says Mommy would like you. He told Grandma that you would have been friends. Something warm spread through Blair's chest. Owen appeared in the doorway holding a box of party supplies. Are we talking about me? He asked. Blair says Mommy would be proud of me, Rosie announced. Owen's face softened. She absolutely would be. You're exactly like her in the best ways. He caught Blair's eye over his daughter's head, and the look they shared held layers of understanding. This wasn't about replacing anyone. It was about making room for something new while honoring what came before. The party was crazy and perfect. 12 6-year-olds running around the backyard, cake smashed on faces, presents torn open with happy screams. Blair found herself laughing more than she had in years, caught up in the simple joy of watching Rosie's happiness. When the last guest had left and the sun was setting, the 3 of them sat in the backyard surrounded by wrapping paper and deflated balloons. Rosie was crashed on Owen's lap, fighting sleep but refusing to admit it. Best birthday ever, she mumbled. Glad it lived up to your high standards, Owen said, smoothing her hair. Rosie lifted her head slightly to look at Blair. Next year you have to come again. Promise. I promise, Blair said, and meant it. After Rosie finally gave in to sleep, and Owen carried her inside to bed, he and Blair stayed in the backyard. The string lights Owen had hung made everything glow softly. "She loves you," Owen said, settling into the chair beside Blair's wheelchair. "You know that, right?" "The feeling's the same," Blair said. "She's an amazing kid." "She is." Owen reached for Blair's hand. "I love you too, in case that wasn't clear." Blair's heart did something complicated in her chest. She had known this was coming, had felt it building between them for weeks. But hearing the words still hit with unexpected force. "I love you too," she said, and watched his face transform with relief and joy. "Yeah?" "Yeah," Blair smiled. "You and your bossy daughter and your terrible habit of leaving coffee cups everywhere." Owen laughed. "I'm a work in progress. Aren't we all?" 1 year later, Blair stood in front of a gallery full of people, feeling equally terrified and excited. The walls were covered with her drawings, blown up and framed. Women in wheelchairs doing impossible things, flying through clouds, climbing mountains, dancing on city rooftops, swimming through space. The show was called Choosing Flight, and it had taken her 8 months to finish. 8 months of early mornings and late nights, of teaching herself computer art, of pushing through the voice that said she wasn't a real artist, wasn't good enough, wasn't anything special. Owen stood beside her, his hand warm against her back. Rosie had made herself the unofficial gallery guide, leading people from piece to piece and explaining them with the confidence of someone who had watched each one develop from sketch to final picture. "That one's my favorite," Rosie told an older woman, pointing at a drawing of a woman in a wheelchair with wings made of pages from books. "Blair says books can help you fly even when your body can't." The woman smiled and moved closer to look at the piece. Blair had included tiny details in the pages, words and phrases from her favorite stories. Owen had found them all, spending an evening identifying each reference like it was a treasure hunt. A man in his 20s came up to Blair, moving carefully on forearm crutches. "These are incredible," he said, gesturing at the walls. "I just wanted to say thank you for making art that sees people like us as more than our problems." Blair felt her throat tighten. "Thank you for coming." "My sister made me come," he admitted with a grin. "She's been following your work online, said I needed to see it in person." She was right. He moved on to the next piece, and Blair felt Owen's hand squeeze her shoulder gently. "You did this," he said quietly. "You made something that matters." "We did this," Blair corrected. "You believed in it before I did." "I believed in you," Owen said. "There's a difference." The gallery opening stretched into evening. People came and went, some buying prints, others just looking. Blair talked until her voice was rough, telling the stories behind each piece, explaining how she made them, listening to people share their own stories of disability and strength, and finding new ways to move through the world. Near the end of the night, when most of the crowd had left, Rosie tugged on Blair's arm. "Can I show you something?" She led Blair to a piece near the back of the gallery, one Blair had almost not included. It showed a woman in a wheelchair sitting at a cafe table. No wings, no impossible things. Just a woman drinking coffee, looking out a window, existing in an ordinary moment. "This one's my real favorite," Rosie said quietly, "because she looks like you, and she looks happy. Not flying happy, just regular happy." Blair looked at the drawing with fresh eyes. She had drawn it on a hard day, when the grand gestures felt fake, and she had wanted to capture something simpler. The quiet happiness of being enough without being extraordinary. "You're right," Blair said. "That might be my favorite too." Owen joined them, slipping his arm around Blair's shoulders. "The owner wants to know if you're interested in keeping some art here permanently. She thinks your work could help them bring in new people." Blair looked around the gallery at her art on these walls, at the people who had spent their evening looking at her vision of the world. A year ago, She had been sitting in a cafe, convinced no one would choose her. Now she was here, chosen and choosing, building something new. "Tell her yes," Blair said. Later, after the gallery had closed and they had put Rosie in the car, they drove through Portland with the windows down and the summer air warm on their faces. Rosie chattered from the back seat about her favorite pieces and which ones she wanted prints of for her room. "All of them," she decided. "I want all of them." "We'll see," Owen said diplomatically. They dropped Rosie at her grandmother's house for the night, and then it was just the two of them driving through the city. Owen reached for Blair's hand at a red light. "I'm proud of you," he said, "for tonight, for all of it. Thank you for not giving up on me," Blair said, "when I ran, when I was scared." "You weren't running from me," Owen said. "You were running from the story you thought we were supposed to be. The one where I rescue you and you're grateful. I never wanted that story." "What story did you want?" Owen smiled. "The one where two people meet on a bad day and decide to make better days together. The one where a little girl asks her dad why a lady is sad, and somehow that question changes everything. This story. The real one." Blair squeezed his hand. "I like this story too." They drove home through streets that had become familiar, past the cafe where everything started, toward a future that didn't need wings or impossible things. Just two people who had chosen each other again and again in all the ordinary and extraordinary moments that made a life. Rosie had been right from the beginning. Sometimes the best stories were the ones that ended like theirs, with happiness that didn't need to be explained or defended or earned through suffering. Just happiness.